Hey guys, this is part 2 of the turbo diesel motorcycle build. Sorry for the long time in between first video and this one. I ended up finding a bad turbo. The old turbo was leaking oil into the intake and wasn't giving hardly 50% boost what it's rated for. So I had to wait for the new turbo to come in and install it and all that. So as you can see, the gas tank, it's still the original gas tank. I cleaned all the rust out from the inside and painted it, fixed all the dents. I'm not getting any particles in the filter, so everything seems to be working okay there. Moving down to the engine mounts. So those are a set 4 of M10 I guess dampers, rubberized with a steel core. Mounts, I guess they're just supposed to go. They can just an anti-vibration device to go under just about anything, any machinery of that. Moving to the front. So the intercooler is just a regular 12-inch intercooler that I was able to find on eBay. Off of the pressure side of the turbo focus. This flange is actually a piece from for a carburetor, but the hole-to-hole distance worked out perfectly. I cut it in half, and it was able to work out perfectly for what I was needing. So that goes into a 90, and then a straight piece of 1.5-inch tubing into another 90 through the frame, and then down through the intercooler. On this side of the intercooler, there's obviously 180 up to a 130 bend to go around the front of the engine, and then into a 45 into the intake of the engine. I tried to keep everything inside the frame as best I could to keep everything as skinny as possible. It worked out okay. So the ignition switch I put on this side. I got a little bracket and it worked out well. I tried to keep the wiring as clean as possible. So most of the wiring, with the exception of in between the seat and the tank, and obviously the main wire to the starter solenoid and the ignition, and of course the charging whirler, the magneto wire coming up to charge the battery, to trickle charge the battery. So most of the wiring is pretty well tucked away. So one thing that I did on this, so I put a chain tensioner right here, because the angle of the driven pulley I had set quite a bit above the swing arm. So both parts of the chain had to go above the swing arm, whereas a normal motorcycle, it would split. The return chain and the top chain would be above and below the swing arm. So I got a weld-on chain tensioner, and I went ahead and bought a 420 sprocket instead of the 530 that came. It seems to be working pretty well. So that's how I did that. Moving along to, I guess, the front side, I just picked up a regular motorcycle headlight from online. It's got high beam, low beam, integrated turn signals. It's pretty bright. The brake systems, I went ahead and just picked up a front master cylinder. The old one I didn't really trust. much. I have to bleed it one more time, but it works great. But there's some residual old fluid that was in it. Moving along to the back, I wanted to keep this, as I said before, as ergonomic as possible for motorcycles. So I wanted to keep the rear brake on the right foot side. So what I did was, this bracket here is actually the original foot brake bracket that would be sitting somewhere in this area with the right foot peg. So I cut it in half, oriented it vertical, attached with a clevis and a 5/16 threaded rod up to the front, where this used to be the gear shifter on the other side. I made a couple of brackets and attached it, and it seems to work, pretty well. All right, enough talking. I'll set you down and I'll start it up. Get the keys. Here we go. Hope you guys can hear me. The turbo drain line, I have it just coming right off the bottom side of the turbo and into the crankcase. It's draining nicely. It's still pretty quiet considering it's a diesel. As you can tell, it does shake quite a bit, obviously. So that's part 2 of the turbo diesel motorcycle build. If you guys have any questions so far about the build, leave your question in the comments. I'll hopefully be able to answer them. Thanks for watching.